Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Hawking and I'm here today to talk to you about Chapter 3, Space Chat. We're going to be finding out more about communications, about how astronauts talk to each other on board a spacecraft and how they communicate with planet Earth. So I've come to Imperial College in London to get some advice from a space superhero, and I'm so excited because today we're talking to Helen Sharman, who is the first British astronaut. Now this is just amazing. Helen is a scientist and she was chosen from 13,000 people to train as an astronaut in Russia, in Star City, before going up on the Soyuz rocket, which is the same way that Tim Peake went into space. So who better to tell us what life in space is really like and how astronauts talk to each other when they're on board their spacecraft.
Hello, I'm Helen Sharman. I'm the first British astronaut and I'm here to tell you about how astronauts talk to each other both in space and talk to people who are actually on the ground on planet Earth. Now, of course, when you're inside a space station, you can just talk, but the problem is that actually it's very noisy on board a space station, and it's noisy because we have fans that have to circulate the air to keep the air moving around and around, and these fans are very noisy. So we can talk to each other, but if we were more than a couple of meters away from each other, we'd have to really shout to make ourselves heard, and that's really a strain, not only on your voice, but also on your hearing. You know, you've got to strain to hear each other. So we would use the radio, even just to communicate, even if we were just a couple of meters away. And at the far end of the module, or if you were even in another module, you might not be able to see each other. So then we would definitely communicate by radio. We were talking in Russian because I was on a Russian space station. I was on the space station Mir, and our language of communication was Russian. You know, I had to learn Russian as part of my training. All my training was in Russian. So perhaps instead of saying, hello, I'm Helen Sharman, I should have said, Привет, меня зовут Helen Sharman. But there we go, Привет is hello. So when we spoke to each other, we would speak in Russian. And of course, when I spoke to the people in mission control on the ground, I would also speak in Russian. Now, we used our radios to communicate with the ground, and that was directly from the space station to certain ground stations on Earth. But there were only a limited number of ground stations on Earth. And once we were over the sea, there was nothing. When we were around the opposite side of the Earth from Russia, there was nothing. So once we were around the opposite side of the Earth, we couldn't communicate with the ground at all. It was totally silent. Now, when we came back round the Earth and came back over Russia again, we could start to talk to mission control on the ground. Nowadays, on the International Space Station, it's quite different. We have satellites in space. They're a long way away. The space station is only 400 kilometres away from the Earth. These satellites are 36,000 kilometres away, but what it means is that when you use your radio on board the space station, those radio signals can go up to a satellite and bounce back down to the ground stations on Earth. So wherever you are around the Earth, you can always communicate with the ground. I think that spaceflight is going to become much more common in the future, but we're going to, for a long time, want astronauts who really understand science and engineering. So if you want to be an astronaut, you need to continue studying science at school, but also you need to understand how to communicate your thoughts and ideas to other people and listen to others who are telling you about their thoughts and ideas. And really importantly, nobody wants to go into space with somebody who's boring. So you need to enjoy life. You need to do lots of different things to get a lot of different experience of all the things that life has to offer and just enjoy living on planet Earth.